4 men trek across the frosted hills. Survivors, warriors, a brotherhood that grows ever more desperate to find their way to civilization. The Rimelands are bleak and cold, and they hide lurking dangers of all kinds. Echoing in the survivors' minds are images of the destruction wrought by the Ettins, led by a doomful war chief. The men are scouring over a hilltop, foraging for anything to eat. This region, like so many others, is struggling to recover from an arcane blight that ended just a little over a decade ago. Worse still, it is winter, and winter is harsh.
These roots! I've never tasted anything so bitter. It burns my tongue.
What could eat anything from these sick trees?
Is it me, or is it getting colder?
We need a fire. We need to keep moving. We've hardly covered 2 miles today. No, we've gone at least 3.
There could be a snowstorm coming in. This thicket might be the best shelter we can find.
Or that place. The men look to where Stephan is pointing. There, built into a nearby hill, is stonework, a dark opening and supports that flank it.
It might be dwarves. Dwarves build halls within hills.
That is not dwarven work. It is a hill tomb.
I'm not going in there.
Let's cross the ridge so we can at least have a better look at it. They plod up the remainder of the hilltop, just past its crest. Their surroundings are thicket and rock and snow piles. Here the men have a more complete view of whatever the stonework is on the other hill.
It is a barrow.
They turn to see a woman whose body is branches and leaves. She is there among the scraggly trees of the thicket. The men startle. Who are you?
She is a witch.
Hans draws a hand axe and readies his stance.
I am Udaima. I am no witch. And who are you for?
We are survivors from the town of Fjarlstead. It was sacked by Ettins. Do you know of it?
I don't seem to recall ever hearing this name, but I am aware that Ettins have been a scourge upon the Rimelands in recent times. I am the keeper of this hill. I am tending the regrowth of this area. It is a difficult task.
And who put you to this task?
My people are seeking this regrowth. We are few. You claim to know about the Ettins. We saw a larger one leading their war band. One of his heads is encased in iron. Do you know of him? He is Brakmaz, who controls this band. Brak is his left head, a foul tyrant. Maz is his right head, masked in iron. He is war chief, though he is an Ettin, and in the orders of giant kind, Ettins are but children.
How can they be children? I saw them, I fought them. They are giant, barbaric men.
Men? Did you not see the boars in them? Boar tusks and pointed ears like beasts.
Are they children or are they beasts? Your words are confusing.
Children often imagine themselves as animals. A child is something like an animal. Crude, wild, even innocent. Then the child discovers pain. Then the child discovers fear. These shadows fall upon some of the animals in his mind, turning them into monsters. After all, many monsters are but embellished animals, or people that are animal in part. If the child becomes corrupted, he imagines himself as a monster. The terror he spreads is drawn from within, like a well of poison. The Ettins are this way. This was the raw beginning of their race, and they have remained so throughout time. Crude, ever at war with the world, for they are ever at war within themselves. Two-headed, for an Ettin cannot unify his own self.
You do seem knowledgeable, but we're in no state to speak philosophy. We are hungry and heartsick with grief.
You may hunt these hills. There is some game to find, but be warned, very few places have keepers such as myself.
We shall hunt, then return here to your hill.
Yes, we will speak of the Barrow. I sense that fate awaits you there.
The men are hunting and foraging in this wooded area adjacent to Odinoir's hill. They're each going to make a survival check, though Stephan and Hans are the only two that are proficient. First comes Alexander's, and he comes up with an 18. That's quite good. Next is Hans. His survival comes to 15. That's also good. Third, we have Stephan's. His is 12. That's not quite good enough. And last is Isaac. He has a 6, which is also not good enough. So Alexander and Hans both are able to hunt down and forage within a few hours here some amount of food. They get about a total of 2 pounds of food between them. However, there is a sighting. The men have spotted a deer there in the woods. Stephan is going to take a shot at it with his longbow. This will cost him one of his 3 arrows. This could be a great source of meat for them to eat. The deer has half cover from trees. Stephan knocks the arrow, carefully takes his aim. The deer has half cover from trees, so it's got an AC of 15. The arrow flies, and he has a 22. He has struck the deer. The thing jumps, and it goes running off into the brush. The men wait for just a little, and then they go tracking down the deer. They follow its footprints, its blood spots, and they find it there dead on the ground with the arrow piercing it through. And there's a great cheer among them. This is going to be the most amount of food that they've had in many days. The deer is a bit scrawny. This area of Magneland, like many parts of Magneland, is still like a hobbled, half sickly thing, right? It's still recovering from decades of arcane blight, even though the blight has been gone for a number of years. So the deer is a bit undernourished, but it still is going to provide a lot of meat, plus what was foraged there. They're going to eat very well this day. Now, as the men are cleaning the deer, as they're field dressing it, they spot in the distance 3 Ettins. There on one of the other hills, 3 of them, and the men go into hiding. They take cover, and they are waiting there, watching and just burning for vengeance at seeing these giant kin lumbering over one of the hills. How they wish they could go and strike down the Ettins, but the chance of defeating 3 of these foes is slim. The grim reality is that it would most likely be lethal for them. The Ettins reach the top of a hill, and they look about and they bicker with themselves. Then they crest the hill and continue on in a southeastern direction. The Brotherhood has been traveling in a southern direction for this past day. The men come back to Odinoir's hill.
You have returned. How did your hunt fare?
The men speak with her about how their hunt went, their great success with the deer and with the foraging. They get a campfire going and prepare to roast the deer meat. We spotted 3 Ettins in the nearby hills. They seem to be roving, or perhaps scouting.
It might be their circumstance is similar to your own. Hungry, hunting and scrounging for sustenance.
They are nothing like us. They are demon-hearted, heathen giants, ogrekin, trollkin, bastards of the world, deserving of death.
Will you give them this death?
Yes, I will. I swear it by the beads of Krav.
Well then, Deathbringer, will you enter the Barrow on yonder hill? Will you brave that place of death?
Why would I go in there?
Because destiny awaits you.
How could you know that?
The trees speak it. The grass speaks it. You could hear fate's whisper if you would only listen.
We only kill when we must. That tomb is a place for dead men. We are living warriors.
Warriors in need of more armaments. Warriors who need to hone their raw abilities. You will find this inside that barrow.
If you know so much, then tell us what exactly lurks inside that place.
I know nothing more, only that it is an old place. You are free to refuse fate's call, but know that by avoiding this danger now, you will face something far worse in the future, and you will be less prepared for it.
She's right. How could we hope to fight the Ettins or that Brakmas as we are? I'm going in there.
A brave soul. Are there any more among you so brave?
We go together. Eudaima looks to Hans, who was the most adamant to the group.
Death Dealer, take these. I hope to see you again once you have dealt with death.
The Arborean gives to Hans a battle axe. Its axe blade has been forged with a silver plating. He takes the weapon, and a surge of confidence runs through him. Perhaps he was fated to brave this tomb after all. The men have made their way to the nearby hill and come in through the Barrow entrance. They find stairs hewn into the ground. The stones here are quite old. It's an old, worn masonry. The atmosphere is quite chilly, and there's this frosty mist that seems to cling and lope near the floor. Alexander's the only one with a torch. He just has the one torch, and he lights it. He and Hans will be at the lead. They come down, and they see that the corridor, this wide corridor, is curving around, a circular type corridor. The men are moving along carefully, quietly. Things seem quiet in the tomb. When they reach this point, I'm going to have them check their stealth rolls. First we'll do Alexander. He's not good with stealth, and he has disadvantage from the chainmail. His result is just a 3, so that's quite low. Hans has a 2, even worse. Stephan has 12, not great. And Izak, the best at stealth, has a 16. All right, we are entering into initiative here. Izak is going to roll with advantage because he has succeeded on the stealth check. Everyone else is going to roll normally. The men have been heard, and they are hearing movement as well. All right, Alexander has heard something moving around, and he comes forward. He's holding this torch out, and he, uses the wall for cover as best he can to see what might be there. And he's just starting to see there at the very far end of his dim illumination some kind of bony warrior. This is causing him great concern. He's going to cast Shield of Faith upon himself to enhance his armor, and he utters a prayer to Krav, and a protectiveness begins to emanate from his very body, and he will also take the dodge action. A skeletal archer comes creaking forward. It shoots an arrow at Alexander, and it has disadvantage, so I need to roll twice and take the lower of the 2. Oh my, it rolled really good, and even with disadvantage and armor of faith, it has hit and done maximum damage to Alexander. Wow, there's 8 piercing, and he needs to make a Constitution saving throw. This is for concentration on his Shield of Faith spell, and he's actually failed his concentration by 1. Oh no. Alexander has lost his focus. Stephan comes in, and he's got a shield strapped onto one arm. He will draw a hand axe and throw it at the skeleton that just shot at Hans. This will be an attack at disadvantage. He throws the hand axe. Unfortunately, a natural 1 is going to be a miss. We move to Izak. Izak is actually hidden. I think he'll move to where he's keeping still some cover from the wall, and he will take the dodge action. It's not the right moment for him to get in there and rush up front. There is the sound of iron scales clattering, and an undead warrior comes into the torchlight. It is a nearly skeletal thing wearing scale mail and has a shield, and there is a burning, malevolent frostiness in its eyes. It will attack Stephan twice by throwing hand axes and disadvantage for being in long range. The first one is a 23. That will hit. The second is a 12, and Stephan blocks with his shield. And this dreadful undead warrior ends up doing 4 damage to Stephan. The skeleton here is going to move up and take a shot at Alexander with its short bow. That is a miss with a 9. We go to Hans now. Hans will move to here. He will go into a barbarian rage. He has a shield at one arm, and he will draw his spear, and he'll throw his spear at this Winterborn warrior. Disadvantage for being in long range. Unfortunately, a natural 1, so he is not going to be hitting, and the spear clatters off awkwardly onto the floor. Skeleton number 1, who none of them have seen yet, it's actually in the darkness, can now see Hans. It had a ready to attack, and it's going to use its ready to attack against Hans. It will have advantage on the attack. Effectively, it's invisible against Hans, and I'll give Hans half cover from the allies of the enemy. 8's definitely not enough on the skeleton's actual turn. I think it will just repeat that same attack. That seems like a fine thing to do. So here we go with advantage, half cover for Hans. 21 will be a hit, and it ends up doing some piercing damage to Hans. Now he is in Barbarian Rage, so he'll resist this. So 6 reduced to 3. On Alexander's turn, he will drop the torch, draw his longsword, and go to engage with the Winterborn warrior. I do need to note that due to Alexander's heavy armor master feat, he actually took 3 less damage from that last hit. So I gave him 3 hit points back. He's drawn his longsword and he'll be attacking the Winterborn warrior. All right, here goes the attack. Comes up with an 11 to hit. The enemy dodges the attack and there is no damage. Skeleton 2 is going to attack Alexander. It actually has advantage on the attack roll. It's outside the radius of the light. It gets out of the torch illumination, and that is a hit. 22 to hit will do it. Comes up with 5 piercing, reduced to 2 from Alexander's feet. Stephan will draw his spear and come in here to attack at the undead warrior. Here's the attack. Looking at only a 12 to hit. It's just not good enough. He will use a luck point for a reroll. This time comes up with a 16. The enemy parries a strike with a clang. 16 was just not quite enough to hit. Stephan is quite concerned. He's going to do action surge and make yet another attack. This time a 22 is going to do it. All right, Stephan's got pretty good damage with his spear, though unfortunately he rolls low. 7 damage to the Winterborn warrior. We got to Isaac's turn now. Stephan will actually yell to him, "Get the torch!" So the time for slinking about really is up. He'll drop the torch along the way, and he comes in to do some flanking. He's going to be attacking with his dagger. Even with a flank, that's just a 6. Bumps to an 8, nowhere near enough. The stab does not find purchase. He used cunning action to dash there, by the way. We go to the Winterborn. It has a longsword of its own and makes 2 attacks against Alexander. The first one is a 9, the second one is a 10, and it has been blocked sufficiently. The Winterborn warrior directs one of the skeletons to step out of the light of the torch. As it moves, Isaac can make an opportunity attack. Only an 11 to hit isn't going to do it. The skeleton goes over to there and to there, out of the torchlight, and it will shoot at Alexander with advantage. I'll give Alexander half cover on this. That will hit. We're looking at 7 damage reduced to 4. Alexander is down to 9. He is bloodied now. Hans will come rushing in with his silvered battle axe. He's going to use the benefit of his charger feat and be making this charge attack against the Winterborn warrior. Hans swings the silvered battle axe, only a 16 to hit. It is blocked on the shield of the enemy. Skeleton 1 takes a shot from the darkness at Isaac. 21 will be a hit. And Isaac takes 5 damage. Ugh! Alexander attacks the Winterborn warrior. 14 is not going to do it. Second skeleton is going to move back and take a shot at Isaac as well. With advantage comes up with a 14. Isaac has a 17 AC. Stephan attacks in a flank, gets a 23. That will definitely hit. And his spear thrust does 11 damage to the Winterborn. That's the best hit on it yet. It is down into the orange. Isaac follows this with a dagger attack. With a flank, he has a 19. He will also hit, and that will be a sneak attack with his dagger, dealing also 11 damage. He slips his dagger between the mail of the Winterborn warrior, piercing it deeply, while Stephan pierces it from the front with his spear. It's quite damaged now. The Winterborn continues its onslaught against Alexander. "You will die." It utters its menacing curse, though the attack is not enough to hit. From the darkness, Skeleton 3 shoots at Isaac. That is going to be yet another hit against Isaac. And he is taking 5 damage. He is definitely down into the orange now. Hans swings his silvered battle axe, and natural 18, that's going to do it. He attacks and connects with the Winterborn warrior. That is going to be a total of 8 damage. The Winterborn is going to make a Constitution saving throw. The DC is 13 in this case. That is an 11. It does not remain standing with an undead fortitude and collapses. Hans turns towards the darkness where the arrows are flying from. You're next! Here is another arrow from the darkness attacking Isaac. A 14 is not enough to hit him. Alexander will secure his longsword there in his arm, and he will reach out and he will restore 8 hit points to Isaac. They're here! And he goes towards the skeletons, menacing at them with the torch. He sees the corridor is curving back up to the northeast. He also sees to the south there is a stony shut door. The skeletons are going back onto the move, trying to stay out of the radius of light as their commander had told them. And this one will make a shot at Alexander, though it's not actually quite beyond the radius of light just yet. Skeleton 2 takes a shot with an arrow that it already had knocked, and the arrow is repelled by Alexander's chainmail, and then the skeleton backs up, getting closer towards the darkness as it was instructed by its undead commander. And then Stephan will come in here. It looks like it's going to be a dash. Yes, he will dash, and he will also switch over to a hand axe. He puts the spear away because stabbing with the spear at bony things is not very effective. Go to Isaac. He has been reinvigorated by the paladin's lay on hands. He will move into a flank. That's like a bonus action, cunning action. He will switch from dagger to his mace. Per his backstory, he does have a feature that allows him to sneak attack with his mace. He will attack here in a flank, comes up with like a 22 to hit, and that will definitely be enough. We're looking at 11 damage, and the skeletons are vulnerable to bludgeoning damage. For vulnerability, I give an additional 50%, so he deals 16 damage and just bashes the skeleton's skull in. Chunks scatter against the wall. Skeleton 3 will take a shot at Alexander. 12 is not going to hit, and it will move back this way, trying to get out of the radius of light. And Hans will be charging in. Can his charger feet get him where he wants to go? His speed moves him to there. Bonus action to dash gets him exactly where he needs. He swings the battle axe. Comes up with a 20. That will definitely hit. Damage is 11 plus the feet makes 16 damage, and he just chops right through and takes that skeleton down. Alexander moved to here, brings the torch, brings the light. He will use dodge where he's at. Stephan will dash and get there behind the skeleton, and Isaac is going to come in with his mace. He moves to there into a flank, makes his attack, and that's going to be only an 11 total. The skeleton draws a short sword and it stabs at Isaac, does hit in fact, and ends up dealing 5 damage to him. Hans comes there, maybe we can consider that a flank as well, and he will swing the silvered battle axe, and he gets a critical hit and just obliterates that skeleton. Broken fragments of bone shards go scattering to the floor, and the undead enemies have been felled. The men are regrouping and assessing things after the fight. Alexander and Isaac really are the ones with noteworthy wounds. Alexander has 1 spell slot left, but he's thinking he might want to save it to do a divine smite. He has 2 points of lay on hands left. Taking a short rest in this particular area does not seem like a good choice. Alexander could use his spell slot for Cure Wounds, though. That would heal a substantial amount. Short rest really is what would make the most sense. Maybe resting outside back on Udaima's Hill. That might be their best option, and then they'll come back in for another delve. They also assess the equipment of the enemies that they have defeated, and the things that are really, they decide are worth taking is Alexander takes 2 hand axes, a short bow, and 2 arrows. Stephan also takes 2 hand axes and a short bow and 4 arrows. Hans takes a short bow and 2 arrows, and Isaac takes a short bow and 8 arrows. Basically, the guys give more arrows to Isaac because he can make the most usage out of the short bow. Let's return to Udaima's Hill. We can rest and recoup, and then try this again.
Yes, I'm for that.
So they backtrack the way in which they came in. Alexander puts out his torch, and they retreat back to Udaima's Hill to take a short rest. So far, the plan's working. They each are going to spend hit dice here. Hans and Stephan don't have much in terms of wounds. They have very superficial wounds, so they'll return to full hit points upon spending a single hit die. Let's see how Alexander's roll fares. Okay, he regains 5 from 1 hit die. I think he's going to spend 1 more. And then 8. Okay, so he's spent both of his hit dice. He doesn't have any more left. Izak is going to roll his d8 plus 2. He regains 9 hit points. So they all have returned to full hit points. And Izak, Hans, and Stephan each have 1 hit die remaining. Alexander has no hit dice remaining. Actually, Stephan didn't even have to spend a hit die. He used his second wind feature. So he has both his hit dice remaining. And he also recovers his action surge. So a little over an hour later, they return. Alexander relights his torch. That's their only light source at the moment. And they delve once again. This time they're going to take the eastward path here of this curve. They decide that they are going to throw open this door here, and it opens into a tomb area complete with these old coffins. And there are 4 skeletal warriors guarding this tomb, which draw hand axes when they see the doors open. Zak is going to make a stealth check here, and he has a 13. That should be a success. All right, Zak will roll with advantage, and then everyone else rolls normally. Begin combat with Alexander, who bravely steps in. He'll set down the torch and draw his longsword. Alexander swings his longsword at the skeletal tomb guardian and misses. Skeleton 4 comes to here and attacks with its hand axe. That is going to be a 15 and is blocked by Alexander's shield. Hans will rush in using his charger feat, and he'll attack the skeleton 6 up there to the north of him with the silvered battle axe. 13 is exactly what he needed to hit, and that is going to do a total of 14 damage, and he chops that skeleton down to bits. Skeleton 7, that's the one that Alexander had struck at. It will swing its hand axe at the paladin, and a 12 is certainly not going to hit. Skeleton 5 will rush at Hans, swinging with its hand axe, and it will miss. Izak will come in, brandishing his mace, and will move into a flank against skeleton number 5. He swings his mace, comes up with a 12 to hit, is not quite enough. Stephan comes there. He'll be attacking that same one. He'll be using a hand axe, one of the hand axes that he claimed from the Winterborn warrior, and just does not hit. He'll save his luck points. He still has 2 of those. Alexander attacks with longsword against skeleton number 7, and he's got only an 11 to hit. Overall, they're not having a good time with their attack rolls. Skeleton 4 will attack Alexander. Its hand axe is blocked. Hans swings his silvered battle axe. That time is also a hit. Does 8 damage, which is a pretty substantial hit to that skeleton there. It goes down into kind of an orangish red. Skeleton 7 down there at the south. It swings its hand axe at Alexander, and 18 is going to be enough to connect. And Alexander is going to take 7 reduced to 4 damage. Skeleton 5 attacks Hans, and it comes with a natural 2, going to be a total miss. Izak will attack with mace. Almost a good roll, but alas, no. 7 is going to do it. Stephan attacks with hand axe. He comes to a 15. That's going to do it. He's got a pretty good amount of damage due to the dueling fighting style. Deals 8 damage, and that will destroy that skeleton there, and he will move here to avail a flank with his ally Alexander, whose turn it is now, and attacks with the longsword. Certainly going to connect, and he's going to deal a total of 11 damage, nearly destroying this skeleton. Probably chips out one of its ribs. In response, the skeleton chops at Alexander with its hand axe, though certainly rolls too low. Hans' attack now. He gets an @2 that time, so his luck wanes on that turn. Skeleton 7 attacks Alexander, gets a nat 18, and once again Alexander is hit. 7 reduced to 4 damage. He's down into the yellow. Here comes Izak attempting to aid his ally, and the mace bashes through that skeletal tomb guardian, and Stephan joins in the attack as well. He comes up also with the nat 2. Back to Alexander. He makes his attack. 15 is going to hit. and he comes up with 10 damage, dealing a pretty serious blow to the skeleton. Let's see if Hans can finish the foe. Hans swings the silvered battle axe, sinks it right into the skull, cracks the skull in half, and the skeleton drops to the floor. About them, the men see what appears to be a tomb of warriors. There are these warriors' coffins, old coffins here, the wood extremely tarnished, the metal fittings gone to rust.
What manner of tomb is this place?
Stephan is squinting and grimacing as he looks about. Alexander and Hans will both be making history checks. Alexander really does not know what kind of place this is or what people these are that constructed this. Hans merely shakes his head.
Damned foul place this.
So as best as they can determine, they might as well try to loot these old tombs. The things here are trying to kill them anyhow. Seems like a much older and rather misbegotten and grim sort of folk. So they'll be kicking open these coffins to see if they can find anything amongst the interred bones of the dead. Old remnants. Alexander is the first to locate something. He's going to do a random treasure table roll. 46. Within this coffin, he finds an old weapon. It's a bit rusted and tarnished, but it looks like it would still function. It's a throwing blade of sorts, but it's more of a curved and rounded one, almost disc-shaped. So he has found a chakram, and Hans is the other one who finds a noteworthy item. He rolls and gets a 26. This is actually on a different table. Perhaps the seal on this coffin was particularly good, for inside he finds robes. Now they are worn and a bit tattered, but they're not completely eaten away by vermin or by time. They appear to be ritual robes, though it's hard to identify. They're really not sure who these people were.
Ugh.
He just tosses the robes back in. I don't think he's actually particularly concerned with those. The corridor here is going southward. There is something of a wish that Isaac could go and scout the way ahead, but with no lighting in here, there just really is no sense to that. So with that, the men press ahead, and they see that the corridor bends to the west, and to the west, an intersection of 3 ways. They peer to see what is beyond. To the north seems to be some variety of tomb, and they do hear movement. Isaac comes against the wall here. Stephan and Hans and Alexander do a bit of a shuffle, but we're going to be going into initiative because something hears the men, and they might even hear it. We'll give a stealth roll for Isaac here. He's got a 20, so he is hidden at the beginning of initiative. All right, Isaac is going first. He will move here, and he readies an attack with the short bow. Next, we go to an enemy. One of the Winterborn warriors steps to here. An undead thing, clad in mail, wielding a long sword and shield.
Trespassers, evildoers.
The undead guardian speaks curses and threats upon the lives of the Brotherhood, and it comes in to attack Hans. An 18 and a 19, both are hits. The longsword does a total of 10 damage to Hans. He's already starting off this fight, taking a moderate wound. I do believe Isaac will get his shot, though, so let's take that. Short bow attack with advantage for being hidden. And that is a critical hit. Sneak attack. You know, technically this happened before the enemy made his attack. I don't think he'll kill the Winterborn in just one hit, though. Alright, the critical hit, sneak attack, does a total of 16 damage to the Winterborn, so it ends up with an arrow right in its chest. It staggers back slightly, and we go to Stephan's turn.
Recognize this.
He shows the hand axe of the other Winterborn that was slain and swings it at this one here. Right, here's an attack roll. Oh my goodness, a 3. I think he's going to do another luck point. So this is the second one that he has used. Natural 19, that will do it. And this time Stephan does 8 damage to the foe. I'm thinking he is going to action surge. So he once again attacks with the hand axe. Nat 17, fantastic. He connects once again. This time does just 7 damage, unfortunately minimum damage, though the enemy is already greatly injured. Alexander is going to step in, try to finish off this enemy, swings his longsword, natural 18, and he cleaves into the Winterborn warrior, dealing 7 damage. It's enough to bring it to 0, though it does have an undead fortitude. So it's going to be a DC 12 con save. 11, 1 under a success, and it actually falls down, clattering to the floor. It does actually have an ally that is incoming, though the Brotherhood has done well. It's slain one of them before the other even got to act, so they're not going to be fighting off 2 of these things at the same time. Actually, I believe the thing would have rather gone there for some cover, but still looking at the party, and it will use this action for dodge. Hans will run this way, and he'll be using Charger. Okay, he still has a 20 to hit. That is going to be a success. And that's going to be 8 damage to the Winterborn, already putting a slight wound onto it. And then Isaac will be quite roguish, and he will use Cunning Action for hide, then come around to here and see if he can get off a potential sneak attack. We'll do his stealth check first. He has a 14, and we'll contest that by the enemy who has 23. Okay, so he is noticed, but he will take a shot all the same. Attacks with disadvantage, rolls 2 nat 14s, 18, but the enemy does have half cover from the wall. The arrow strikes against the wall corner, and Isaac, who was sort of playing it safe, will come over to here. You can see there's some chamber over here to the west, looks like kind of a smallish one. And then down here to the south looks to be a stony door. Stephan will come in here. I think he'll be going into a flank. Can he get there? Yeah, he can get into a flank and will attack the Winterborn, flanking with Hans. His hand axe swings. It is a critical hit. And chop deals 11 damage to the Winterborn warrior. Alexander will come into here and drop his torch, attack with his longsword. I'll say it's a flank with Stephan. That is certainly going to hit. And the longsword strikes the Winterborn for 10 damage. That is taking it down into the red. The thing is going to attack Hans. I think that's its target. It swings its longsword twice, though cannot hit with either of those. All right, Hans attacks with his battle axe, and he comes up with a 16. That's not quite enough, repelled by the shield of the Winterborn. Isaac slinking around down here. I think he'll Cunning Action for hide, and then creep out to take a shot with the longbow. We'll do his stealth check first. Okay, he has a 22, contested by the Winterborn's perception, which is looking to be a 9. Okay, so Isaac is hidden. He will attack with advantage, though the foe has half cover. So he takes a shot. Oh, it's only a 10. He'll end up back down there. Stephan will attack with the hand axe. He swings. It's a flank, definitely a hit, and he is going to deal a total of 7 damage to the Winterborn, bring it down to 1 hit point. It is at just a fraction, though it does have that undead fortitude. Let's see if it can hang on with that. Alexander hits it, so got to see what the damage is. That will determine the DC. So it's going to be 5 plus 5 is 10. I think it's got a pretty good chance of succeeding on the con save. 10. Oh my gosh, it rolls a natural 1. None of the Winterborn end up making their undead fortitude saves, and the thing falls to the ground. Finally perished, fully perished. The Brotherhood of Fjarlstead has once again vanquished the undead Tomb Guardians. There are new coffins here in this crypt. More of them, and this one in the center seems to be honoring a particularly powerful champion or warrior from some olden time. They're going to be searching through these coffins now to see if they can find anything worth claiming. Another thing is I believe Stephan now is deciding to claim one of the long swords of the Winterborn warriors. So it's a bit tarnished and rusty with age, and it's a little unsettling for him to be wielding that weapon, but it's a sturdy blade and something a bit more powerful than the spear and the even the hand axe. Alexander and Hans are also somewhat injured, so they're going to have to make some decisions about what to do there. So first, Stephan will open the coffin in the southwestern corner of this room. Gonna roll on a random treasure table here. It comes up with an 89. That is a good roll. He finds in there an old falchion, a curved, single-edged blade, something stronger than a scimitar, though not a light weapon. Essentially a one-handed D8 slashing finesse weapon. Before Alexander opens up the middle tomb, I am giving a free perception check. He might notice something. He does not. He does not notice these faint glyphs on the coffin of the champion. And when he opens it, there is an effect. A visage like scowling eyes of shadow appears momentarily over the coffin, and a sensation of dread washes over Alexander. He must make a wisdom saving throw. He has a +3 to wisdom save. Rolls a nat 14 is 17. Some dread tomb curse attempts to lay hold of Alexander, but his willpower is strong. And he will do his roll. 86, also a good roll. This is on a different treasure table, something a little bit better. Within the champion's tomb, there is a suit of chainmail and a longsword. So Alexander, I suppose, will take the longsword. I guess he's getting 2 of them because there's also the one from the other fallen Winterborn warrior. He's starting to get a bit laden, but I think he's still okay on his encumbrance. Now, the chainmail, I think Stephan might equip that. Yes, so Stephan will remove his chain shirt, this sort of lighter end of medium armor, and then don the chainmail. That whole process takes about 11 minutes, and his AC goes up by 2. Assuming he has his shield equipped, his AC went from 16 to 18, so that is a really nice boost. Alexander himself already has chainmail. And Hans kicks open that coffin in the northwestern corner, 73, and he as well finds another longsword, so he will take that, and maybe at some point they can get something for these weapons, these items that they've accumulated. Their torch is starting to burn a bit low. I'm going to say it wouldn't work for them to extinguish it and relight it again. They're on their last, bit of it. So they're not really able to take a short rest. Alexander does have 1 spell slot left, and he could cast a Cure Wounds. I think he's going to hold on to it. They're going to press on. Maybe Stephan and Isaac will go in front for the time being. Or maybe just one of them. Maybe just Stephan will go in the front for the time being. He's got a decent perception.
What sort of destiny is supposed to be waiting for us in here?
He looks over here to the west, and then down to the south, there's this one stone door. Stephan is going to take a glance here and see what he might be able to see here in this smaller room. There's the skull of some kind of creature. It almost reminds him of maybe a dire wolf skull. And it's there right in the center of the room. And when he steps in there, a stone slab comes down, sealing him in. And that brumal mist that is slinking along the whole of this ancient barrow begins to increase within this chamber. And this deathly, freezing atmosphere begins taking over. He hurries over to the slab and sets himself against it, all of his strength, and tries to force the thing open. Oh my gosh, he rolled excellent. He has a 21. He actually almost gets it, but the thing is just so heavy, so difficult. At the end of his turn, he makes a Constitution saving throw against this freezing mist. He comes up with a 15, which is a success. So he's getting very cold, shivering, but it has not damaged him yet. Stephan! Alexander goes over to the slab himself, and I think he's going to try to also break it down. All right, strength check is a 22. Oh my gosh, he bashes with all of his might against the stone slab and breaks the thing halfway open. It's there at this cocked angle, and Stephan gets himself out of there, and they get away from this freezing death chamber. There is the door down here. Isaac is going to go and take a look at it. He will make a perception check. He actually has expertise in perception from a rogue class feature. 23. Nothing rouses his suspicions. He does not think the door is unsafe in any way, so he will open up the door. Inside is a small chamber, and it is adorned with a number of different hanging decorum, beads made from bone and stone and dyed with pigments. Now the pigments have faded out greatly with age, but they're hanging here, and there is a box, a wooden box in the room, And I will say that Izak still feels confident that this is not some ruse or death trap, and he will open up this wooden box of old to find inside, 64 on the treasure table, a gem, a tiger's eye gem. So this like beautiful, glimmering, golden, tan-colored gem is worth 10 gold pieces. Fairly well satisfied that there's nothing else in this segment of the Barrow. The Brotherhood are going to be moving elsewhere. They come back down this southern section of the curving corridor to this double door they had seen previously. A stony thing, heavy, old, time-worn. Izak looks at it. He does not notice anything that rouses his suspicions, and he will open it. Inside there is a larger chamber, kind of medium to large. The walls contain some etchings, some carvings, like a almost primitive or barbaric bas-relief that shows some sort of rite where warriors are receiving some kind of winter blessing or winter ritual, and they're being empowered, and their eyes have this kind of intensity. I won't quite call it a glow. There's not exactly a shining effect, but there's something different about their eyes. And there's iconography of these blessed warriors guarding a barrow. Otherwise, the room itself does not have any creatures or major structures to it. An old hall of rites, perhaps. And Izak inspects the next door and again does not feel that there is any danger to the door itself. He opens the way, which is leading eastward. The men come into a room and they see in the northwestern corner there is a stony statue of a menacing dragon. And we're going to organize things here now by initiative, because the dragon statue is going to be breathing frost at them. Wisps of the brumal frost begin emanating from the dragon's maw, and the men determine that they need to get moving. Alexander is going to come over to this side of the room. Come on, come on! He's doing a dash around the corner. I will give him a free perception check, as he might notice something here. Rolls up perception, comes up to a 12. That is not good enough. And the thing he did not notice is a pit. As he steps forward, the ground gives way beneath his feet, and he falls 20 feet to a spiked bottom. He takes 2d6 bludgeoning plus 2d6 piercing. Oh, 21 damage. Unfortunately, the heavy armor master feat is not going to help him here. That feat is against attacks. And so he falls, he takes 21, and he is unconscious, dying. He is in very bad shape here, battered and stabbed through by spikes at the bottom. Hans and the other two are plunged into darkness. That torch fell down the pit with Alexander. I wonder if it's going to be burning him. We'll check. It might actually be burning him down there. So he moves, and he's, feeling out for the wall and moves cautiously. He can see just a tiny bit of light coming up out of the pit, and he looks down, and the pit itself now is illuminated. He sees Alexander down there, unconscious, about ready to die. No! He's going to try to climb down there. He's not going to give up on Alexander, and oh my gosh, he rolled so terrible on his athletics check. He attempts to climb down. Old loose stones break free, and he falls as well. Ah! And the total damage is 11 to Hans. He is badly wounded, though he is not actually killed. He's just prone and badly hurt. The dragon now makes an attack, a magical attack with a blast of frost. It will be at advantage because this is against Izak, who can't see this now. It's a 16 to hit. It's 1 under a hit. Izak's armor absorbs the worst of the frosted blast. We got a Stephan's turn. He is going to be dashing to get here as well. There's a bit of a quick exchange just to see what's happening down there. Hans is making sure the torch is not burning Alexander. Alexander's about to die. Hans is very wounded.
We can't stay in here with this dragon.
Stephan knows that it's not going to be possible for him to stay in this room getting blasted through the darkness by the dragon statue. He's going to try to climb down there as well. He's got a +6 athletics, so a really good athletics. He's going to try to get down there to help. 16 is good enough, And so let's see, he was just into a dash. So he basically uses the full extent of his dash movement to get down to the bottom and like carefully step so he's not jabbing his feet onto the spike. So he's down there. Izak goes running across the room. He remembered seeing there was like an entryway to the north, and he feels out and like, touches the wall and like feels his way along towards the north to where he believes he has full cover from that dragon's frost attacks. Now we go to Alexander's turn. He's making a death saving throw. There is one success. Hans gets up, crouching onto his knees. He's trying to render aid to Alexander. He will make a medicine check. He doesn't really have any bonus to this, so just hoping to roll well. 8 is not going to do it. Alexander is having a hard time of it. Stephan as well is attempting to help. He will make a medicine check, wisdom, and he succeeds. So Alexander is not dying. He is at 0 hit points, but stable.
You have to get him out of here.
How is he?
Izak calls out from the darkness.
He is alive. Barely we have him. Hans is badly hurt.
We have to get out of here,
says Stephan. He draws the potion of spider climb that he found previously, and he drinks that.
I'm getting you out.
He's a very, very strong man. They probably have to dump a little bit of weight. Maybe they take a couple of those long swords that they found, take a couple of those long swords off of Alexander, and they basically get Alexander wrapped about Stephan's back, and with now like this perfect spider climbing speed, he hauls Alexander up out of the pit. As soon as he comes up over the lip of the pit, that statue, that dragon statue, sends out a blast of frost. It's a 19 to hit. Actually, it does have advantage. Let me roll one more and see if maybe it gets a critical. It doesn't. It blasts Stephan, and he suffers 6 cold damage. Goes from 22 down to 16. That would be his turn. Izak is waiting. Alexander's unconscious. Hans is waiting down there. Then it's back to the statue's turn. So that was a readied attack. Now on the statue's turn, it does its actual attack. Again, a blast of cold through the darkness. 21 hits Stephan yet again. This time he takes 5 cold damage. And Stephan is holding the torch in his mouth, gripping the haft of it, and the torch is dwindling low. It's not giving off a lot of light now, not as much as it was before. And the side of his face is starting to get pretty hot from the flames crackling, but it is affording some illumination. And he'll be at half speed here, dragging unconscious Alexander. And a dash will get him to there, almost out of the room. And Izak will say is aiding, and he gets them pulled all the way into the corridor.
I'm going for Hans now.
So let's say the statue goes, it readies. Stephan's turn. I think he'll use second wind to get some hit points back. He will, oh my gosh, he rolled so low. He's going to get 3 hit points back. He rolled minimum. That's terrible. So here he goes. He runs out. He gets to there. The dragon statue releases its readied breath. Looking at a nat 19, definitely going to hit. Once again, Stephan is taking cold damage. That is a total of 5 cold. And he will make his way. Let's see, there's that and then dash. So he's basically almost all the way down into the pit. Izak waits. Alexander's unconscious. Hans is waiting for Stephan to get down, and Stephan's going to help climb him out of there. The statue readies, of course. Stephan gets to the bottom.
Grab onto me. We're going to make this.
So we go all the way back around to the next turn on Stephan's turn when he is hauling Hans out of there. Hans can do a bit of climbing himself. He's not completely knocked out, though he's very hurt, but he's relying mainly on the spider climb of Stephan. Stephan's breath is pretty ragged. Even though the spider climb makes him climb perfectly, literally like a spider, he still is helping carry up all this weight. Fortunately, he's a really strong man. So Stephan tries to be clever about this and just like pokes his head over the lip. The dragon breath does attack at him with the readied attack. I'll give him 3/4 cover this time since he so cleverly used the lip of the pit to his advantage. But it's got some pretty good attacks. It's still 26 to hit. Stephan takes 7 cold damage. He is down to 2. Go! So Hans is basically already coming up over the lip. He doesn't need to be hauled any longer. Stephan's going to run His dash will just get him to there. Izak comes up to help, gets him through to there. We go to Hans now. He's acting right before the dragon statue, so he can rush in there with a dash and get out of the danger area. The room that they're entering into here is clearly some sort of trap chamber, but the traps are sprung, and they see skeletons like picked clean of people who died upon spears and deadfalls in this room, and they're dragging Alexander, and they're getting out of here. Izak is not wounded, but everyone else is badly wounded, and in this way they go, fleeing out of the Barrow of the Winterborn, past old coffins and strange corridors of some archaic and barbaric dark age. And they go back out into the light, into the fading light of the late day. So they did not completely succeed on their adventure here. They did not explore the entire Barrow and find all the treasure in there and defeat all the challenges, the destined challenges that were awaiting them. So they will get half the experience reward, which is 300 XP per character. Fortunately, that is enough to still get them to 3rd level. They're all at 1000 XP each, so they will be leveling up, and thankfully none of them died. They also got a couple weapons out of this, and Stephan got a nice upgrade to his armor. So not a complete success, but a partial success. Thank you everybody for following along. This was a really big one and was a lot to produce. If this series or any of my other videos are meaningful to you, if you enjoy them, please consider becoming a supporter of mine on Patreon. That's Esper the Bard on Patreon. There's a link down in the video description. That support really helps make projects like this possible, but they are some of my favorite things on my channel, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well. And as always, a bardic bow of gratitude to everyone who is already a supporter of mine over on Patreon. Until we meet again, my brave companions, may your adventures be many.